What is up, everybody? We're on day 74 of our Bible in a Year series. We are in the book of Judges right now. We're going to be reading through Judges 7 through 9 today. Kind of an interesting story. Starting off here in Judges 7 about how God is going to pick Gideon's army, if you will. Very interesting way in which this happens. But we are reading out of the Christian Standard Bible. If you're interested, it'll be on the screen. I also have a link in the description if you are interested in getting one for yourself. It is the CSB Apologetics Study Bible. It is a Bible that I personally use quite a bit with my personal reading and studies. So, my chair will stop squeaking. We will get straight into it. Judges 7. Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all the troops who were with him got up early and camped beside the spring of Harod. The camp of Midian was north of them, below the hill of Moreh in the valley. The Lord said to Gideon, "You have too many troops for me to hand the Midianites over to them, or else Israel might elevate themselves over me and say, 'I saved myself.' Now announce to the troops, whoever is fearful and trembling may turn back and leave Mount Gilead." So God is telling Gideon he has too many troops because if he wins, it could look like it was him and not God. So, yeah, God's going to make sure that he gets the glory as he deserves. Where was I? Announce to the troops, whoever is fearful and trembling may turn back and leave Mount Gilead. So 22,000 of the troops turned back, but 10,000 remained. Then the Lord said to Gideon, "There are still too many troops. Take them down to the water, and I will test them for you there. If I say to you, 'This one can go with you,' he can go. But if I say about anyone, 'This one cannot go with you,' he cannot go." So he brought the troops down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, "Separate everyone who laps water with his tongue like a dog. Do the same with everyone who kneels to drink." The number of those who lapped with their hands to their mouths was 300 men, and all the rest of the troops knelt to drink water. The Lord said to Gideon, "I will deliver you with the 300 men who lapped and hand the Midianites over to you, but everyone else is to go home." So there may be a little bit of a practical reason here. I've heard, this is just speculation. It's not necessarily anywhere in Scripture, but I've heard that maybe the reason why is because the ones that lapped water up out of their hand like a dog shows that they were still staying upright, and they were looking and being observant to their surroundings, so they were more ready and prepared for a battle, versus the ones who knelt down to the water themselves. They could have very easily been overtaken by enemy if they were to come in. Now, again, that's speculation. The Bible doesn't explicitly say that. It is entirely out of people's heads, just where this idea came from. That could be a practical reason for that. It also could just be that God knew that there's going to be 300 that did that, and that's what he went with. So yeah. Verse 9. That night the Lord said to him, "Get up and attack the camp, for I have handed it over to you. But if you are afraid to attack the camp, go down to Purah, your servant. Listen to what they say, and then you will be encouraged to attack the camp." So he went down to Purah, his servant, to the outposts of the troops who were in the camp. Now the Midianites, Amalekites, and all the people of the east had settled down in the valley like a swarm of locusts, and their camels were as innumerable as the sand of the seashore. When Gideon arrived, there was a man telling his friend about a dream. He said, "Listen, I had a dream. A loaf of barley bread came tumbling into the Midianite camp, struck a tent, and it fell. The loaf turned the tent upside down so that it collapsed." His friend answered, "This is nothing less than the sword of Gideon, son of Joash, the Israelite. God has handed the entire Midianite camp over to him." When Gideon heard the account of the dream and its interpretation, he bowed in worship. He returned to Israel's camp and said, "Get up, for the Lord has handed the Midianite camp over to you." Then he divided the 300 men into 3 companies. He gave each of the men a ram's horn in one hand and an empty pitcher with a torch inside it in the other hand. "Watch me," he said to them, "and do what I do. When I come to the outpost of the camp, do as I do. When I and everyone with me blow our ram's horn, you are also to blow your ram's horn all around the camp. Then you will say, 'For the Lord and for Gideon.'" Gideon and the 100 men who were with him went to the outposts of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch after the sentries had been stationed. They blew their ram's horns and broke the pitchers that were in their hands. The 3 companies blew their ram's horns and shattered their pitchers. They held their torches in their left hands and their ram's horns to blow in their right hands. And they shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." Each Israelite took his position around the camp, and the entire Midianite army began to run, and they cried out as they fled. When Gideon's men blew their 300 ram's horns, the Lord caused the men and the whole army to turn on each other with their swords. They fled to Acacia House in the direction of Zerera, as far as the border of Abel-Meolah near Tabbath. Then the men of Israel were called from Naphtali, Asher, and Manasseh, and they pursued the Midianites. Gideon sent messengers throughout the hill country of Ephraim with the message, "Come down to intercept the Midianites and take control of the watercourses ahead of them as far as Beth-bara and the Jordan." So all the men of Ephraim were called out, and they took control of the watercourses as far as Beth-bara and the Jordan. They captured Oreb and Zeb, the 2 princes of Midian. They killed Oreb at the rock of Oreb and Zeb at the winepress of Zeb. While they were pursuing the Midianites, they brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon across the Jordan. Pretty intense still. As I said, this just continues and continues and continues and continues. This doesn't stop. Okay, chapter 8. The men of Ephraim said to him, "Why have you done this to us, not calling us when you went to fight against the Midianites?" And they argued with him violently. So he said to them, "What have I done now compared to you? Is not the gleaning of Ephraim better than the grape harvest of Abiezer? God handed over to you Oreb and Zeb, the 2 princes of Midian. What was I able to do compared to you?" When he said this, their anger against him subsided. Gideon and the 300 men came to the Jordan and crossed it. They were exhausted, but still in pursuit. He said to the men of Succoth, "Please give some loaves of bread to the troops under my command, because they are exhausted. I am pursuing Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian." But the princes of Succoth asked, "Are Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hands, that we should give bread to your army?" Gideon replied, "Very well. When the Lord has handed Zebah and Zalmunna over to me, I will tear your flesh with thorns and briars from the wilderness." He went from there to Penuel and asked the same thing from them. The men of Penuel answered just as the men of Succoth had answered. He also told the men of Penuel, "When I return safely, I will tear down this tower." Now, remember Gideon originally. The being scared. So scared, in fact, that he was threshing wheat in a wine press, which, as we talked about, is a very dangerous thing. It doesn't seem like he's scared now. Verse 10. Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkor, and with them was their army of about 15,000 men, who were all those left of the entire army of the people of the east. Those who had been killed were 120,000 armed men. Gideon traveled on the caravan route east of Nobah and Jogbehah and attacked their army while the army felt secure. Zebah and Zalmunna fled, and he pursued them. He captured these two kings of Midian and routed the entire army. Gideon, son of Joash, returned from the battle by the ascent of Heres. He captured a youth from the men of Succoth and interrogated him. The youth wrote down for him the names of the 77 leaders and elders of Succoth. Then he went to the men of Succoth and said, "Here are Zebah and Zalmunna. You taunted me about them, saying, Are Zebah and Zalmunna now in your power that we should give you bread to your exhausted men?" So he took the elders of the city and took some thorns and briars from the wilderness, and he disciplined the men of Succoth with them. He also tore down the tower of Penuel and killed the men of the city. He asked Zebah and Zalmunna, "What kind of men did you kill at Tabor?" "They were like you," they said. "Each resembled the son of a king." So he said, "They were my brothers, the sons of my mother. As the Lord lives, if you had let them live, I would not kill you." Then he said to Jether, his firstborn, "Get up and kill them." The youth did not draw his sword, for he was afraid because he was still a youth. Zebah and Zalmunna said, "Get up and strike us down yourself, for a man is judged by his strength." So Gideon got up, killed Zebah and Zalmunna, and took the crescent ornament that were on their necks of their camels. Now, I find it strange, and maybe I'm sure there's probably a reason. Maybe it's kind of the fear thing creeping back in, but that Gideon didn't want to do it himself at first. He wanted someone else to do it. Verse 22. Then the Israelites said to Gideon, "Rule over us as you as well as your sons and your grandsons, for you delivered us from the power of Midian." But Gideon said to them, "I will not rule over you, and my son will not rule over you. The Lord will rule over you." Then he said to them, "Let me make a request of you. Everyone give me an earring from his plunder." Now the enemy had gold earrings. Now the enemy had gold earrings because they were Ishmaelites. They said, "We agree to give them." So they spread out a cloak, and everyone threw an earring from his plunder in it. The weight of gold earring he requested was 43 pounds of gold. In addition to the crescent ornament and ear pendants, the purple garments of the kings of Midian, and the chains on the neck of their camels, Gideon made an ephod from all this and put it in Ophrah, his hometown. Then all Israel prostituted themselves by worshiping it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and his household. So, before we continue, one thing you will see as a very common thread, and is kind of like the main point of Judges. God can appoint these people, but these people are still flawed, and these people cannot save us. Pretty much every single judge, at least if they go into detail talking about them, it does not go well. It doesn't end well. They may do what God wanted in defeating an enemy or something like that, but when their life kind of comes to an end, it ends in a bad place. So, verse 28. So Midian was subdued before the Ishmaelites, and they were no longer a threat. The land had peace for 40 years during the days of Gideon. Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, son of Joash, went back to live at his house. Gideon had 70 sons, his own offspring, since he had many wives. His concubine, who was in Shechem, also bore him a son, and he named him Abimelech. Then Gideon, son of Joash, died at the good old age and was buried in the tomb of his father. Joash and Ophrah of the Abezerites. When Gideon died, the Israelites turned and prostituted themselves by worshiping the Baals and made Baal Berith their god. The Israelites did not remember the Lord their God, who had rescued them from the hand of the enemies around them. They did not show kindness to the house of Jerubbaal, this is Gideon, for all the good he had done for Israel. Okay. Chapter 9. Abimelech, son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem and spoke to his uncles and to his mother's whole clan, saying, Please speak in the hearing of all the citizens of Shechem. Is it better for you that 70 men, all the sons of Jerubbaal, rule over you, or that one man rule over you? Remember that I am your own flesh and blood. We're pushing on time, and this is a long chapter, so I'm probably going to kind of run through this quickly. Verse 3. His mother's relatives spoke all these words about him in the hearing of all the citizens of Shechem, and they were favorable to Abimelech, for they said, He is our brother. So they gave him 70 pieces of silver from the temple of Baal Berith. Abimelech used it to hire worthless and reckless men, and they followed him. He went to his father's house in Ophrah and killed his 70 brothers, the sons of Jerubbaal, on top of a large stone. But Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, survived because he hid. Then all the citizens of Shechem and of Beth Millo gathered together and proceeded to make Abimelech king at the oak of the pillar of Shechem. When they told Jotham, he climbed to the top of Mount Gerizim, raised his voice, and called to them, Listen to me, citizens of Shechem, and may God listen to you. The trees decided to anoint a king over themselves. They said to the olive tree, Reign over us. But the olive tree said to them, Should I stop giving my oil that people use to honor God, both God and man, and rule over the trees? Then the trees said to the fig tree, Come and reign over us. But the fig tree said to them, Should I stop giving my sweetness and my good fruit and rule over trees? Later, the tree said to the grapevine, Come and reign over us. But the grapevine said to them, Should I stop giving my wine that cheers both God and man and rule over the trees? Finally, all the trees said to the bramble, Come and reign over us. The bramble said to the trees, If you are really anointing me as king over you, come and find refuge in my shade. But if not, may fire come out from the bramble and consume the cedars of Lebanon. Now, if you have acted faithfully and honestly in making Abimelech king, if you have done well by Jerubbaal and his family, and if you have rewarded him appropriately for what he did, for my father fought for you, risked his life, and rescued you from Midian. And now you have attacked my father's family today, killed his 70 sons on top of a large stone, and made Abimelech the son of his slave woman, king over the citizens of Shechem, because he is your brother. So if you have acted faithfully and honestly with Jerubbaal and his house this day, rejoice in Abimelech, and may he also rejoice in you. But if not, may fire come down from Abimelech and consume the citizens of Shechem and Beth Millo and may fire come from citizens of Shechem and Beth Millo and consume Abimelech. Then Jonathan fled, escaping to Beer, and lived there because of his brother Abimelech. When Abimelech had ruled over Israel 3 years, God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the citizens of Shechem. They treated Abimelech deceitfully, so that the crime against the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might come to justice, and their blood would be avenged on their brother Abimelech, who killed them, and on the citizens of Shechem, who had helped him kill his brothers. The citizens of Shechem rebelled against him by putting men in ambush on the tops of the mountains, and they robbed everyone who passed by them on the road. So this was reported to Abimelech. Gideon, son of Ebed, came with his brothers and crossed into Shechem, and the citizens of Shechem trusted him. So they went out of the countryside and harvested grapes from their vineyards, not vineyards. They trampled the grapes and held a celebration. Then they went to the house of their God, and as they ate and drank and cursed Abimelech, Gideon, son of Ebed, said, "Who is Abimelech, and who is Shechem, that we should serve him? Isn't he the son of Jerubbaal? And isn't Zebul his officer? You are to serve the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem. Why should we serve Abimelech? If only these people were in my power, I would remove Abimelech." So he said to Abimelech, "Gather your army and come out." When Zebul, the ruler of the city, heard the words of Gideon, son of Ebed, he was angry. So he secretly sent messengers to Abimelech, saying, "Beware, Gideon, son of Ebed, and his brothers have come to Shechem and are turning the city against you. Now tonight, you and the troops with you come and wait in ambush in the countryside. Then get up early, and at sunrise attack the city. When he and the troops who are with him come out against you, do to him whatever you can." So Abimelech and all the troops with him got up at night and waited in ambush for Shechem in 4 units. Gideon, son of Ebed, went out and stood at the entrance of the city gate. Then Abimelech and the troops who were with him got up from their ambush. When Gideon saw the troops, he said to Zebul, "Look, troops are coming down from the mountaintops." But Zebul said to him, "The shadows of the mountains look like men to you." Then Gideon spoke again, "Look, troops are coming down from the central part of the land, and 1 unit is coming from the direction of the diviner's oak." Zebul replied, "What do you have to say now? You said, 'Who is Abimelech that we should serve him?' Aren't these the troops you despise? Now go and fight them." So Gideon went out leading the citizens of Shechem and fought against Abimelech, but Abimelech pursued him, and Gideon fled before him. Numerous bodies were strewn as far as the entrance of the city gate. Abimelech stayed in Arumah, and Zebul drove Gideon and his brothers from Shechem. The next day, when the people of Shechem went into the countryside, this was reported to Abimelech. He took the troops, divided them into 3 companies, and waited in ambush in the countryside. He looked, and the people were coming out of the city, so he arose against them and struck them down. Then Abimelech and the units that were with him rushed forward and took their stand at the entrance of the city gate. The other 2 units rushed against all who were in the countryside and struck them down. So Abimelech fought against the city that entire day, captured it, and killed the people who were in it. Then he tore down the city and sowed it with salt. When all the citizens of the Tower of Shechem heard, they entered the inner chamber of the temple of El-Berith. Then it was reported to Abimelech that all the citizens of the Tower of Shechem had gathered. So Abimelech and all the troops who were with him went up to Mount Zalam. Abimelech took his axe in his hand and cut a branch from the trees. He picked up the branch, put it on his shoulder, and said to the troops who were with him, "Hurry, do what you what you have seen me do." Each of the troops also cut down his own branch and followed Abimelech. They put the branches against the inner chamber and set it on fire. About 1,000 men and women died, including all the men of the tower of Shechem. Abimelech went to Thebez, camped against it, and captured it. There was a strong tower inside the city, and all the men, women, and citizens of the city fled there. They locked themselves in and went up to the roof tower. When Abimelech came to attack the tower, he approached its entrance and to set it on fire. But a woman threw the upper portion of a millstone on Abimelech's head and fractured his skull. A millstone. He quickly called his armor bearer and said to him, "Draw your sword and kill me, or they'll say about me, 'A woman killed me.'" So his armor bearer ran him through, and he died. So, just to avoid it being said that a woman killed him, he had his armor bearer do it. In this way, God brought back Abimelech's evil, the evil that Abimelech had done to his father when he killed his 70 brothers. God also brought back the men of Shechem, all of their evil, so the curse of Jotham, son of Jerubbaal, came upon them. Okay. All right, so that's it for the reading for today. Again, I'm going to try to hit these questions quickly because we're pushing in on time. Or actually, a little over. Question 1. God reduces Gideon's army to 300 in Judges 7. How does this challenge our reliance on our own resources versus trusting God's provision? I do think there's a lot of times where God will make it to where you cannot do something on your own. So you have to trust him. You don't, there's no other option. But also, he will have it stacked so much against you that there's no way it could have been anything other than God did it. This is not always the case, but I think a lot of the time this is. Question 2. Gideon's ephod in chapter 8 leads Israel back to idolatry. What can this teach us about the dangers of misusing even well-intentioned victories? I think you can honestly turn pretty much anything into an idol, even a victory that God gives. Right? And then you're into the area of you are putting you're putting it above the level of the giver. You're elevating the gift to be at the level of the giver, and it's not. We need to make sure that we don't do that. We keep our focus on God and not something else. Question 3. Abimelech's ruthless ambition in chapter 9 contrasts with Gideon's humility. How do we guard against pride or selfishness after experiencing God's blessing? I think a really good way to do this, and this is a phrase I heard for the first time. I heard it from Braxton Hunter. I don't know if it was his originally or if he heard it somewhere else, but he is the one that I give credit to with this because he's the first person that I heard say it. But it is, there's nothing special about me. I'm simply one beggar showing another beggar where to find bread. So when we realize that it's not about us, has nothing to do with us, we are not special. That's hard to hear, especially in the West. We are not special at all, except for the reason that we said yes to God using us. That's it. We're not special. We're not anything different or better or anything like that than anybody else. So we need to make sure we act like it. Okay, that is it for today. We are over on time, I believe. So if you're still watching, appreciate it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. I enjoy reading comments, getting comments, and commenting back as well. So I try to get all of them that I can. If this has been a blessing to you, don't forget to share the word. Word of mouth is the best way that podcasts spread. So you could get other people in on this. We can get more people listening and help build a healthy habit of reading your Bible every single day with more people. So feel free to share it around. We're getting back into Judges tomorrow. Judges 10 through 12 will be what we read tomorrow. And it's more good. So more interesting. So we'll see you then. Thanks. God bless.